Watching the slowly bubbling kettle, Gyatane had to admit he might have underestimated the situation, considering this was already the 5th cup of tea he was making that day and it wasn't even afternoon. Not that he complained. It wasn't the most difficult of tasks, and after all, this is what boyfriends, fiancés, and husbands were for. He still sighed as he poured the hot water over the tea bag though, cringing slightly over the use of it instead of the regular way. Unfortunately, their pantry was almost empty now, and the only tea left was in the bags. Whatever. As long as it's warm, it doesn't matter what it is. He grabbed the steaming mug and headed to their bedroom, blinking rapidly a few times to get his eyes used to the dim light, before putting it on the bedside table, right next to a big bundle of blankets on the bed. Gently, he ran his hand over the swell under the covers, earning a pitiful whine. I'm out. I have the tea you wanted, and I'm not going to warm it up again just because you left it to go cold. Another grumble later, and Kyouhaba's head emerged from the cocoon of blankets, disheveled and crumpled and ridiculous as he eyed both the mug and Gyatane with clear disgruntlement. Gyatane only rolled his eyes and nudged Kyouhaba's shoulder. At least breathe the steam for now. It'll help clear your nose. His fiancée was truly a pitiful sight right now. Eyes all glossy and red, same as his nose from the constant rubbing by napkins that now started to form their own ocean around the bed. Pale skin and hands trembling a little. He made a mental note to collect all the napkins later to clean up a bit. But for now, it was Kyouhaba who needed his attention the most, even though he didn't seem grateful at all. Can't you just put the mug here? No, you'll spill it all over yourself again. I'm not changing the sheets for a time this week. Kyouhaba huffed and narrowed his eyes at him in what was probably supposed to be a scorching glare. But the effect was significantly lessened by the sniffling coming from his nose and rosy cheeks. You are so mean to me. Hey, be a bit grateful, you spoiled princess. I'm taking care of you from the goodness of my heart. What goodness? You're torturing me. I can go to gym or for a walk. I'm not taking care of ungrateful brats. He made an acted attempt to get up from the bed, but was stopped almost immediately when a hand shot out of the covers like a snake, capturing his wrist. Don't you dare. Gyatane almost laughed, but managed to restrain himself to only a smile. Sure, he would never make light of his beloved's sickness, but it didn't hurt to remind Kyouhaba to be a good patient from time to time. You're such a child sometimes, you know that. Especially when you get sick. Kyouhaba frowned, but finally slowly unwrapped himself from his nest to grab the still steaming mug. Gyatane immediately huddled him back into the makeshift cocoon, leaving only his head and hands with the mug out, holding back with every bit of willpower to not go for a kiss. I hate being sick. Well, it's your fault. I told you shouldn't run around the garden in just a sweater, but you never listened to me anyway, so this is just karma. Grumbling, Kyouhaba lowered his head to the mug, carefully sipping on the tea. I wasn't there for that long. And don't drag karma into this. You just want to be all smug that you were right for once. What do you mean for once? You just can't admit when you are wrong. That's one of your biggest issues, you know? You hate when others are right. Oh, so we are going to count out our flaws now, are we? Because I can give you a long list of yours. Oh yeah? So why did you start dating me when I have so many flaws? Kyouhaba froze mid-movement, every remaining hint of playfulness gone from his face in an instant, and Gyatane cringed inwardly. He didn't mean to sound so harsh. especially when he couldn't really have a meaningful conversation about it right now given Kyouhaba's state. But emotions got the better of him. Again. Are you serious? Gyotane shrugged, trying his hardest to appear unbothered by the hitched undertone in Shigeru's voice. Why not? You seemed serious about counting my flaws too. He knew he shouldn't push it, not right now, but he couldn't stop himself. He didn't really think too much into the challenge before, but now that he said it out loud, he realized he was equally curious and scared of the answer. It wasn't like Kyouhaba was wrong about his flaws. He could probably make a list too if he thought about it for a while. So why? You know I'm grateful for your care, right? Doesn't seem like it most of the time. Kyouhaba winced and lowered his eyes, the tiny movement sending a sharp needle of guilt through Gyotane's heart. He grabbed Kyouhaba's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. I'm sorry, of course I know that. I'm just curious, and since you kinda brought it up, I supposed I could ask, but it came out wrong. Kyouhaba didn't look very convinced, but set the mug on the table and folded his hands in his lap. It's because you're so unique. I really like that you aren't afraid to speak your mind and that you always go after your dream, all while still being really kind and caring under the grumpy face of yours. Remember when we found that puppy? I thought you were about to steal it from that vet just so you could take care of it yourself. It was adorable. He looked up hesitantly, as if waiting for Gyotane to snap something back. I know we had a bit of a rough start, but I'm really glad we talked it out back then. Gyotane couldn't stop the soft smile on his lips, nor himself from leaning in this time to kiss Kyouhaba's forehead at least. A wave of all kinds of emotions surged through his chest, but above all, the familiar warmth only loving Shigeru brought up. Me too. You have no idea how happy I am to have you next to me all those years. Kyouhaba smiled back, his face finally free of the worried lines. But before he could say anything, a loud sneeze echoed through the room. Gyotane flinched before handing Kyouhaba another pack of napkins. But now drink the tea and get back into that nest of yours. Yeah, good idea. Being awake at night had a sort of peaceful feeling to it for sure. However, Taichi definitely couldn't feel any peace at that moment. It had been about half an hour since he was harshly awakened by yet another of his recent nightmares that just refused to leave him alone, and couldn't close his eyes since then. He desperately wanted to slip back to sleep, if only to finally rest his mind after several long shifts at work. But his body refused to cooperate with his wishes, as it always did after all. And so he was left lying wide awake in their bed in the middle of the night, listening to the faint sounds from outside the window and Hato's calm breathing next to his ear. He rolled over on his side to face his partner, hoping the closeness could help him fall asleep like so many times before. Although that only happened when Hayato was awake too and hugging him. He didn't have the heart to wake his fiancée up though. Guess I'll have to wait until my eyes get tired. Or maybe I could just get up and get something done since I'm awake anyway. As if hearing his thoughts, Hayato suddenly stirred in his sleep, grumbling softly something Taichi didn't catch before pulling Taichi to his chest, surprisingly firmly for someone who was asleep. Taichi startled, but then had to smile, his heart swelling over the gentle display of affection. Or maybe not. He sighed again, reminded of the challenge he still didn't do since there simply wasn't a good opportunity to bring it up. Or perhaps he was just lying to himself and stalling for time to delay the inevitable. An answer he was too scared to hear. Maybe I shouldn't dig into it. We never talked about it for a reason. Glancing at Hayato's peaceful sleeping face, he felt his chest constricting a bit. He knew well why he fell for Hayato back in high school. Nothing changed since then in the last 6 years. But Hayato's side was a different story. Sure, Hayato was the one who ended up confessing first in the end, and Taichi highly doubted anyone would manage to stick around for 6 years just from pity. But the tiny part in the back of his head, where all the unpleasant thoughts were stored, was very vocal ever since he agreed to the challenge. Just why did you come after me that day? Why? He startled when the arms so far only loosely wrapped around his waist squeezed him harder, and almost jumped when Hayato's eyes opened. Why aren't you asleep yet? Taichi bit his lip and looked away, unable to hold Hayato's sleepy and yet surprisingly alert gaze. I was asleep, I got woken up. Nightmares again. Taichi paused, his first instinct being to deny it, to not worry for no reason, but then just nodded, keeping his eyes somewhere in the area of Hayato's collarbones. Hayato hummed quietly and tugged him closer to his chest. Do you want to talk about it? I don't know what it was about. I just woke up suddenly. It wasn't the full truth. He remembered some parts of the dream, but he didn't have the stomach to talk about those things out loud. Not at night. Hayato seemed to understand and shifted slightly to get a bit higher on the bed so that Taichi's head was now nicely tucked under his chin. Okay, that's fine. We can talk when you are ready. Do you think you can fall asleep again? I don't know. He couldn't contain the soft whine when Hayato started running his fingers through his hair, the touch sending pleasant shivers down his spine. Alright, let's try this, okay? Taichi squeezed his eyes shut, clenching Hayato's night t-shirt in his hand in a desperate attempt to ground himself, which earned him a soft chuckle from above. There, it's alright. I'm with you. But why? No. He tried to clear his head and only enjoy the feeling of Hayato's ever so gentle fingers in his hair. But despite finally managing to relax to some extent after a few minutes, he still couldn't stop himself from thinking about the question he was supposed to ask. Just why? What's wrong? No longer surprised by how perceptive Hayato was, Taichi raised his head to meet the tender gaze of his beloved's chocolate eyes. I was thinking, why did you start dating me? Hayato's brows knitted together immediately, his fingers halting in their movement. Why are you asking that all of a sudden? I was wondering. I didn't really give you any reason to like me more than just the teammates, so I thought... The rest of the words died off on his tongue when the familiar soft lips captured his. He froze when Hayato kept his face, his breath catching in his throat despite the tender gaze focused on him. Or maybe because of it. You gave me every reason to love you. I wouldn't confess if I didn't feel anything for you. But... I know you have trouble seeing it, but you're an amazing human being. There's always been something special about you, and the longer we are together, the more amazing I find you. You deserve to be loved, if only for just how strong you are, Not even mentioning how caring and sweet you are. You have so many qualities, I can't even make a full list of them because there's always something new I found out about you. He leaned in for another kiss and touched his head spun. Every little thing that makes you you is worth falling for, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Tachi's vision hazed. He hid his face in Hayato's chest, biting hard on his tongue to stop the pressure building behind his eyes. Are you for real? Of course, I wouldn't lie to you about this. A light kiss landed on Tachi's temple before he was pulled even closer to Hayato's chest. Try to sleep now, okay? I'll keep guard over you. Sighing deeply, Matsukawa pushed himself back in the chair, covering his face with his palms to muffle the frustrated groan making its way out of his mouth. He tried to ignore how his back cracked with the motion, and the fact that the long hours of sitting above paperwork were apparently starting to shorten his muscles. I'm getting old, huh? He shook his head and piled the papers into one neat column, holding back not to push them on the floor just so he didn't have to look at them anymore. Unfortunately, that would mean more work for him the next day, which was simply not worth the momentary satisfaction. He was quite sure Maki would laugh at him if he heard his thoughts and would probably add some remark of his own. The image made him smile and pumped new energy into his limbs, enough to finally make him move. He was going to come home late again, of course he was, just as in the last several days. But just knowing Maki was waiting for him warmed his heart. Unless, of course, he messed up their homely peace by asking the challenge question. Honestly, part of him was dreading the outcome of the challenge. Sure, he knew there wasn't really anything he would have to be scared of since Maki assured him on several occasions that his feelings were still burning bright in his heart. But even that much wasn't enough to silence that little doubtful voice in his head. Was he unfair and selfish for that? Maybe. Something told him Maki would forgive him though. We'll see, I guess. Maybe he won't even take it too seriously. That would be ideal. He startled when his phone suddenly rang. The heavy clouds hanging over his mind cleared up, and he couldn't stop the smile from returning to his face seeing Maki's contact picture flashing on the screen. Guess I should hurry up. With that, he grabbed his bag and accepted the call, heading straight out of his office and towards their car. You really don't know when to stop working, do you? Matsukawa attempted his best guilty expression, though he had to put most of his acting skill to use since the corners of his mouth were already curling upwards over watching Maki's expressions. He arrived home much later than he anticipated, finding Maki waiting for him with dinner and a scorching glare ready. Not that he ever took Maki's glares too seriously, but now Maki deserved an apology, if only for having to wait for him with dinner. I'm sorry. I promise I'll come home normally again. Maki huffed and stubbed his chopsticks into a piece of beef, very much reminding Matsukawa of his sister's kids when they got grumpy. That's not what I want to hear. I just want you to not overwork yourself again. His face suddenly changed, enough to shock Matsukawa into silence, and reached for his hand. You know that nightmares get worse when you are exhausted. Matsukawa froze for a moment before sighing deeply and lowering his gaze. Of course he knew, and Maki was right. He's had enough opportunities over the years to notice patterns in regard to his night terrors, but the reminder was enough to reawaken the ill feeling in his guts. Just why was Maki still hanging around him, let alone still dating him, even during the worst of the nightmares when he could have much more fun elsewhere. Ise? Is everything okay? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to remind you, I just... Despite the dark pit that opened in the place of his stomach, Matsukawa forced a smile and entwined their fingers together over the table. I know you were making a point. It's alright. And you are right. It's just this week. There's a lot of paperwork needed to be done. It should get much better next week. He bit his lip and briefly looked away, collecting his thoughts and courage before looking into Maki's now concerned eyes again. But can I ask you something? Sure, of course. Why are you asking about asking though? Because it's kinda out of nowhere, but at the same time it's a bit personal too, I guess. Well, then ask away. I was just wondering, why did you start dating me? Maki stilled with the chopsticks halfway to his mouth, for a while just staring at Matsukawa with a blank face, though Matsukawa knew better. Knew the little flickers in Maki's eyes meant the man was thinking quickly about the question. Why are you asking so suddenly? After so long too? It just occurred to me that we never really talked about it. And it's not like I didn't give you enough reasons to leave, yet you never did. Why? Because I love you, simple as that. Now it was Matsukawa's turn to be confused. You answered fast. Maki shrugged, his face becoming peaceful once again with the familiar hints of a smile. Because it's an easy question to answer in the end. You've never given me a reason to walk away from you, and I think you're amazing. I mean, of course we had a few rough days, but in the grand scheme of things, those are just minuscule moments, and your qualities way outweigh any setbacks. Even the nightmares? Maki clicked his tongue and gently smacked his hand. If you really think I would leave you because of something you have no power over, then you're dumber than I thought. I know I can't really help you with them, but I'm always here for you, remember? And I'm not going anywhere. Feeling his hands starting to tremble, Matsukawa managed to muster a smile as he brought Maki's hand to his lips, leaving a feather-light kiss on his fingers. Deep down, he knew this was the answer he should have expected, knowing Maki was exceptional in his own lovely way. And yet, hearing him say it out loud still brought tears into his eyes. You're helping me just by being with me. I love you so much, you know, for everything you do for me and much more. Maki smiled back, his cheeks now matching the color of his hair. Glad to hear that. Now eat before it gets cold again. The closer to home Basho came, the more he had to think about the challenge. He was all for helping Ushijima with his decision for proposing, even if it was only through moral support. But the more he thought about the possible answer he could get, the less he was sure he wanted to know it. Especially after the last time he discovered Konoha wasn't feeling secure in their relationship because of his inexpressiveness, which in turn broke his heart. Since then, he tried to change his approach to affection, but it still wasn't enough. He could see it in Konoha's eyes. The silent question asking if that was it after a hug. The longing glances he gave to the couples they met on the walks. The unspoken wish to be loved visibly. No matter how many times his boyfriend tried to deny it. Bashir was neither blind nor stupid, despite what people said about him. Which was also why he was now dragging himself home as if something weighed on his ankles, lost in his thoughts about how to make up for his apparent inattentiveness for the last 2 years. Maybe I should just ask him what he wishes for after a challenge is done. It would prevent awkwardness and further hurt. Nodding to himself, he sped up a bit to get home as soon as possible, while trying to ignore the way his chest constricted upon imagining all the possible scenarios of getting a negative answer to any of his questions. Tatsu? Is that you? Washio hummed softly in greeting before catching himself and speaking out loud. Yes, it's me. I'm sorry it took me so long. He heard a short, quiet laugh, and soon Konoha appeared in the hallway, his smile unusually bright and easily able to make his heart skip a beat. No worries, I thought you had longer practice again. Your coach should really ease up sometimes, or you'll be too tired to actually play. Sorry. Finally kicking down his shoes, Washio moved to engulf Konoha in a tight embrace, relishing the way his boyfriend smiled against his neck before relaxing in his arms. Feeling cuddly today? He wasn't, not necessarily, but suddenly he found himself unable to let go, craving the contact and all the touches he was getting whenever Konoha was close. The same ones he deprived his own boyfriend of because he couldn't act like a proper partner. Sorry. He wasn't even sure what he was apologizing for. For coming home late? For not noticing his own boyfriend was hurting? For being selfish now? Maybe it was all of it and some more. Konoha looked up, looking even more confused than he felt. You are apologizing awfully a lot today. Did something happen? I'm not. You are. Those were 3 sorries in the last 5 minutes, and I still don't know what for. Washio sighed, feeling like an absolute fool. If this was about to continue, he could as well forget about getting a positive answer. I don't know. For everything, I suppose. Clicking his tongue in apparent displeasure, Konoha pinched his cheeks before cupping his face to make him look down at him. You aren't making any sense, you know? Which is really weird for you. Are you still worried about the showing affection thing? Washio avoided his eyes before he managed to stop himself, which, judging by the soft sigh he heard, was enough for Konoha to understand. Is that why you are so huggy today? I told you it's fine. You are doing so much for me now, you don't have to stress yourself about it anymore. You don't have to change your entire behavior because of me. I don't want that. I like you the way you are. For now. You wouldn't get insecure if I was different. Maybe, but then I don't think we would ever get together. Washio paused, confused. We wouldn't? But you said you get jealous of others when they are affectionate. The most adorable flush colored Konoha's cheeks, confusing Washio even more. Well, yeah, but that's just one stupid part of me. A tender smile returned to his face, together with the blush on his cheeks making him look so pretty as he wrapped his arms around Washio's neck. The rest of me is in love with you as you are. But why? Why date me when there are better... The rest of the sentence never left his mouth as Konoha's lips sealed the words away. Don't you dare. But... if I thought there is someone better for me out there, I wouldn't say yes when you asked me out. He sighed then, letting his hands travel to Washio's shoulders and giving them a firm squeeze, while some of the fierce pout disappeared from his face. I mean what I said. I love you the way you are. I love that you don't talk much because it makes me appreciate your words much more. And you are so kind and sweet, and you keep me grounded. His cheeks reddened even more, yet he still held Washio's gaze without faltering. And you give the best hugs in the world. I've never felt safer than when I'm with you, you know? I'm sorry I made you think that you have to change for me to love you. That's not what I wanted. Actually, I don't think I would ever fall so deep for you if you were different. They stayed silent for a long while, just looking at each other. Washio clenched his jaw, trying to sort his thoughts and the emotions swirling in his chest he could only make a little sense of. However, he knew what could help, and so he pulled Konoha back into his arms, wrapping him in a tight embrace, and hid his face in the crook of Konoha's neck. He clung to Konoha's words, to the soft chuckle by his ear, both telling him things weren't as bad as he worried. He was going to put in more effort in the future too, of course he was. But it seemed that his beloved at least wasn't disappointed in their relationship. I should have said it sooner, huh? No, I didn't expect you to think like this. Why wouldn't I? You're amazing. I guess that's why I even started to worry before, you know? It got me thinking that everyone would be so lucky to have you and... you know the rest. Washio shook his head, finally composed enough to pull away a bit and connect their lips again, the kiss sending his heart racing, just like always.